Meditation is an ancient tradition in Buddhism and has been widely spread around the world. One way to convey the philosophy and values of meditation is through short stories that contain profound lessons. The story of the teacup. A professor went to visit a Zen master to learn about meditation. The Zen master invited the professor for tea. He filled the professor's cup and continued pouring until the tea overflowed. The professor exclaimed, "The cup is full, no more can be added." The Zen master replied, "You are like this cup, full of opinions and assumptions. If you don't empty your cup, how can I teach you meditation?" Lesson from the story. This story teaches us that to learn and absorb new things, we need to empty our minds of preconceived notions and existing knowledge. Only when we open up and receive can we truly learn and progress. Meditation is not just about sitting in silence, but also about living in the present, embracing everything with an open and non-judgmental heart. The story of the teacup is a crucial reminder to always keep our minds empty to absorb and learn. The story of the two monks and the young girl. There were two monks, one old and one young, walking on a muddy road. At one point, they saw a young girl trying to cross but hesitating because she didn't want to dirty her dress. The old monk immediately carried her across the muddy path and set her down on the other side without a word. The young monk remained silent for the rest of the journey, but it was clear he was troubled. Finally, when they reached the temple, he couldn't hold back any longer and asked the old monk, "Why did you carry that girl? We are monks and are not supposed to touch women." The old monk replied, "I put her down long ago, but you are still carrying her in your mind." Lesson from the story. This story reminds us that we often carry unnecessary burdens in our minds, such as thoughts and emotions that are not worth holding on to. To live peacefully and serenely, we need to learn to let go of the past and not cling to unnecessary worries. The story of the precious stone. An old Zen master had a beautiful precious stone. One day, he gave it to a student and said, "Take this stone and find out its value." The student took the stone to a market and asked a fruit seller. The fruit seller said, "I can give you a basket of apples in exchange for this stone." The student thanked him and said he would come back later. Then, the student took the stone to a jewelry shop. The jeweler looked at the stone for a while and said, "I can give you $10,000 for this stone." The student thanked him and said he would come back later. Finally, the student took the stone to a famous gemstone collector. The collector looked at the stone and said, "This is one of the rarest stones I've ever seen. I am willing to pay $1,000,000 to own it." The student returned and told the Zen master what had happened. The Zen master smiled and said, "You see, the value of the stone does not lie in itself, but in the eyes of the beholder." Lesson from the story. This story teaches us that the value of an object or a person is not always accurately assessed. We are often influenced by others' opinions, but the important thing is to recognize the true value of ourselves and what we possess. The story of the cracked pot. A water bearer had two large pots, each hanging on one end of a pole he carried across his neck. One of the pots was perfectly fine and always delivered a full portion of water, while the other pot had a crack and delivered only half the amount of water. The cracked pot felt ashamed and sad about its imperfection. One day, it spoke to the water bearer, "I am so ashamed of my crack. I can only bring half the water, causing you trouble every day." The water bearer smiled and replied, "Don't you realize? On the path back home, I planted flowers on your side of the path. Every day, as I carry water back, water leaks from your crack and waters the flowers. Thanks to you, we have beautiful flowers to decorate the house." Lesson from the story. This story teaches us that everyone has their imperfections, but these flaws can also bring unique value and beauty. Instead of blaming ourselves, we should recognize and appreciate the positive things we can contribute to life and others. The story of the bamboo. A young boy asked a Zen master, "Master, how can I become strong and firm like bamboo?" The Zen master took the boy to a bamboo forest and said, "Look at this bamboo. It has spent many years growing, but no matter how strong the wind blows, it does not break. The secret is that it knows how to bend with the wind. True strength is not in rigidity, but in flexibility and adaptability. Lesson from the story. This story reminds us that in life, resilience comes not only from rigid strength, but also from flexibility and adaptability. Knowing how to bend and adjust ourselves in the face of difficulties and challenges helps us become stronger and more steadfast. The story of the goose in the bottle. A Zen master gave his students a bottle with a goose inside and asked, "How do you get the goose out of the bottle without breaking the bottle and without harming the goose?" The students pondered and suggested various solutions, but none satisfied the Zen master. Finally, the Zen master said, "The goose is out." The students were surprised and asked, "Master, how did you do it?" The Zen master smiled and said, "The goose was never trapped in the bottle. It was all an illusion in your minds." Lesson from the story. This story teaches us that many problems in life are created by our minds. Sometimes we get trapped in unnecessary thoughts and worries. By changing our perspective and realizing that the problem might not actually exist, we can free ourselves from the constraints we create. This is another Zen story called The Lone Plum Blossom. There was an old Zen master living in seclusion in a deep forest, devoted to his practice and indifferent to worldly affairs. One day, a young student came seeking to become his disciple. The Zen master agreed, but with a condition. "You must stay here and take care of the garden and observe the lone plum blossom, a single plum tree, for a whole year. If you can understand the lesson from the lone plum blossom, I will teach you." The student agreed and began tending to the garden and the plum tree. Throughout spring, the plum tree sprouted new shoots and blossomed with pure white flowers. The student saw the abundance of life and felt hope. In the summer, the petals fell and the plum tree began to bear fruit. The student realized that everything changes and nothing is permanent. Autumn arrived, and the leaves of the plum tree started to change color and gradually fall. The student understood that aging and decay are a natural part of life. Finally, winter came, and the plum tree stood bare without leaves or flowers. But the student did not feel sad, for he realized that the tree was preparing for a new cycle, a rebirth in the coming spring. After a year, the Zen master asked the student, "Have you understood the lesson from the lone plum blossom?" The student replied, "Master, I have understood that life is a series of continuous changes. Birth, death, joy, and sorrow are all natural parts of the life cycle. We need to accept and live in harmony with them." The Zen master smiled. "You have understood correctly. The lesson of the lone plum blossom is impermanence and acceptance. When you understand this, your mind will always be at peace, no matter what you face." I hope this story will bring you a deeper understanding of the natural laws of life and peace in your soul. This is the Zen story, The Migrating Birds. There was a Zen master living in a small temple amid vast mountains. Every year in autumn, hundreds of birds would stop in the mountains before continuing their migration to the south. The Zen master often spent time sitting by a small pond in the temple, watching these birds. One year, when the bird migration season returned, a visitor came to see the Zen master and found him sitting by the pond, watching the flocks of birds crossing the blue sky. The visitor asked, "Master, where are these birds flying to?" The Zen master gently replied, "They are flying south, seeking a warm environment to await the winter." The visitor continued, "Master, will they easily find a new environment?" The Zen master pondered for a moment and said, "Perhaps not always easily, but they know they must continue their journey, no matter the difficulties and challenges, because they understand that only by facing and overcoming them can they find what they are looking for." The visitor reflected on the Zen master's words and felt a sense of peace. They realized that life is like the journey of migrating birds, sometimes full of hardships and challenges, but if we have determination and perseverance, we will achieve what we seek.
If you find this video interesting, please hit the subscribe button to motivate me to make more similar videos.